today, and it's an excuse to represent Florida hometown with a band called Yes, Cincinnati.
And to be honest with you, there were actually some women in the trial who got the vaccine, who actually later then became pregnant.
You're so emotional and so sweet that I'm afraid that you will lose objectivity and that you will get yourself into a situation you might not have it.
When we come back, Council of Economic Advisors Chair Cecilia Rouse on the strong July jobs report and whether the improving labor market of staff.
Not Rangers. Interesting series 219 activity.
Competing for college football playoffs, and the rub here is that there really aren't teams that are regularly competing for college football playoffs that conduct themselves offensively like SC does. And I think that's where the friction here is the identity of a team offensively doesn't lend itself to USC reaching the ceiling we know it can reach by virtue of its stature out in the recruiting landscape. So, even as a guy that I didn't go to SC, but I'm frustrated for them because even though they were 5-1 last year, I think the ceiling for this team and this program is higher than what they're dealing with right now. It's a little frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is USC. I think USC fans are hesitant and skeptical about the area just because it hasn't produced, the results that fans saw in the Pete Carroll era. And of course, you're going to compare anything to Pete Carroll is a hard thing to do. But I think fans tend to trend towards tradition because that's where the success was for USC for so long. So I think that's why that you see that hesitation. But I think if USC is able to win and do well against its opponents, then I think the conversation of how they're winning will probably die down a bit.
Three.